No one in that courtroom expected the final moments to unfold the way they did. The judge offered one last chance for remorse, a moment that could have brought closure to a shattered family. But instead of an apology, the defendant delivered something far stranger, leaving everyone stunned and unsure of what they were even hearing. And what happened next would change the entire atmosphere of the room. When the judge called the defendant to the stand, the entire room went silent. Everyone there knew this was the moment that mattered most, the final chance for him to speak, to take responsibility, to show even a trace of remorse. Families who had sat through every painful detail of the trial waited, hoping to hear something that could at least acknowledge their loss. Even the judge seemed to hold a quiet expectation, giving him the opportunity to say whatever he needed before the sentence became official. But as he opened his mouth to begin, something felt off, and the tension in the room shifted almost immediately. And what came out next caught everyone completely off guard. The first words out of his mouth didn't resemble an apology at all. Instead of acknowledging what he'd done, he drifted into a strange monologue about emotions, intellect, and a world that only he seemed to understand. His tone wavered between confusion and conviction, as if he was trying to explain something no one had asked about. People in the courtroom exchanged quick looks, realizing he wasn't following the judge's instructions. Every sentence pulled farther away from the moment at hand, and the more he talked, the clearer it became that he wasn't preparing to take responsibility. The judge listened for as long as she could, but it was obvious this wasn't heading anywhere close to remorse, and she knew she'd have to step in soon. It didn't take long for the judge to interrupt. She had given him a clear direction: speak honestly, stay focused, and offer remorse if he had any. But the more he wandered into unrelated ideas, the more the judge realized he wasn't going to get there on his own. Her tone shifted, firm but controlled, as she told him to cut straight to the point. No philosophy, no detours, just the truth. Even then, he insisted he was getting to it, yet every attempt to explain himself only pulled him further away from responsibility. The tension in the courtroom thickened as the judge tried again to guide him, hoping he'd finally understand the gravity of the moment. But it was becoming painfully clear that he had no intention of staying on track, and the judge knew exactly what that meant. When he finally claimed he was starting his apology, no one in the room believed it. Instead of acknowledging what he'd done, he shifted the blame onto other people entirely, mentioning unrelated adults, past family issues, and situations that had nothing to do with the case. Every sentence drifted further from responsibility, as if he was trying to rewrite the moment into something that suited him. The families who had been hoping for sincerity watched as the chance for closure slipped away. Even the judge could hear it clearly. This wasn't an apology, and it wasn't remorse. It was an attempt to distance himself from actions he could no longer avoid. And just when it seemed he might circle back and finally say the words everyone was waiting for, he pushed the blame even further, leaving the entire courtroom stunned. At a certain point, the judge had heard enough. After giving him every chance to speak from the heart, it became clear he wasn't going to apologize, accept responsibility, or even stay on topic. His final opportunity, the moment that could have shown the families a sliver of remorse, had collapsed into confusion and excuses. With calm authority, the judge ordered him removed from the stand, ending the moment before it spiraled any further. The courtroom watched in silence as he stepped away, leaving behind nothing but unanswered expectations and a heavy sense of disappointment. The families had hoped for even a single sincere acknowledgement of what they'd lost, but instead, they were left with the realization that no apology was coming. And with that, the focus shifted to the final step, the sentence that would decide the rest of his life. Once the defendant was removed from the stand, the courtroom moved into the final phase. The prosecution didn't hesitate. They requested the mandatory life sentences for each count, making it clear that the severity of the case left no room for leniency. The defense, fully aware of the outcome, didn't challenge the recommendation. There was no debate, no last-minute arguments, no attempt to sway the judge. The law was absolute, and everyone knew it. When the judge spoke, her attention turned to the families who had endured every step of the trial. She acknowledged their strength, their patience, and the emotional weight they carried from the moment this tragedy began. She recognized the heartbreak they had lived through, and how they continued to honor their loved ones by seeing the process through to the end. And with her final words, the sentence became official, a lifelong consequence that matched the gravity of the acts committed, closing the chapter on a case that had shaken everyone involved. This courtroom moment shows just how fragile the expectation of closure can be. Even when given a final chance to acknowledge wrongdoing, some people refuse to face the truth, leaving families and onlookers with a raw sense of what accountability truly means. The impact of that refusal is felt far beyond the courtroom. It lingers in the memories of those who survived the trial, and in the lessons it leaves about responsibility, justice, and the human capacity to evade both. Sometimes the most revealing moments of a case aren't in the verdict itself, but in how people respond when confronted with the truth. And in this instance, the truth was undeniable. Remorse wasn't offered, accountability wasn't claimed, and the weight of justice had to carry the rest. When the judge spoke, her attention turned to the families who had endured every step of the trial. She acknowledged their strength, their patience, and the emotional weight they carried from the moment this tragedy began. She recognized the heartbreak they had lived through, and how they continued to honor their loved ones by seeing the process through to the end. And with her final words, the sentence became official, a lifelong consequence that matched the gravity of the acts committed, closing the chapter on a case that had shaken everyone involved.